Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Morning, everybody, and welcome to Chassidus in the Morning, 15 minutes with Kuntres HaTefila. So, we're in the middle of Perek Ches, and we're discussing about the whole purpose. One of the main purposes is transforming the Nefesh Bahamis. We actually started to talk about it in Tanya, I think it's today. And yeah, we have to take control of our lives, make sure that Nefesh Elokis is the one that's making the decisions and not Nefesh Bahamis. So on the top of page 84, we were discussing yesterday, recognizing, having to, like, part of our job is to recognize our Nefesh Bahamis. And what type of Nefesh Bahamis is it? Is it, like we said yesterday, is it a goat, which is very stubborn, but it's not like it just doesn't, meaning, but it's sort of lifeless in a certain sense? Or is it like an ox, which is goring, which is a lot more rough, and people that are insensitive and say rough things, so to speak, kick people, but it also can be transformed. Or it's like a lamb, it's like a little shepsela, So we have to recognize what is, which one is, and we end up saying how the purpose of the neshama coming down to the body is to refine the Nefesh Bahamis. So let's see. So then we're discussing a few ways how to get the Nefesh Bahamis on board. One of them is to explain to it in things that it can understand. So it will have an excitement for love and fear of God. Alternatively, this avodah can be executed by studying subjects that transcend the grasp of the natural reason, or you can learn things that are above what the Nefesh Bahamis can understand. So then how are you going to get the Nefesh Bahamis to get involved? He doesn't understand what's going on. You're going to lose him, no? So he says, using this method, the excitation of the godly soul's emotions with its increased vigor overwhelms the natural emotions of the animal soul, thereby subduing them. So the other way is by getting the Nefesh Elokis so excited, learning at something that he can connect to. So the Nefesh Elokis is so excited, that excitement spills over, so to speak, to the Nefesh Bahamis. It takes control over you, you're totally involved. In other words, when a person is ecstatic with a genuine love for godliness, so when you get genuinely excited about godliness, this love overpowers the animal soul's foreign love for material pleasures and enjoyment, subduing the animal soul so that it no longer wants them. So when you so want Elokos, so then you automatically, Nefesh Bahamis doesn't want, it won't be interested in the desires for Gashras, for example. For example, let's say you come home from work, or you finish your day, and this is, I'd say a little bit like mine, you finish your day and you're exhausted. You finally get your kids to sleep, or whatever you do, everything you do, and you're just tired, you want a break. And so normally, wanting a break means wasting your time doing something you shouldn't be doing. And what happens? And you decide to finish off chitas, where you learn something, you chaza what you learned in the morning, you do something like that. When you're finished, and I see this for myself totally, when I finished, like I feel so much more connected. My taiva for doing something that I shouldn't be doing is non-existent, really. It's not fully non-existent, unfortunately, but it's, when I sit there and I'll learn a piece of Gemara after, and normally it's like I'm tired and I'm like, my head, but I do, and I push myself. When I finish, it's like a whole new world opens up again. And then I had last week, and I just start learning so much more, and I do so many better things. And that's what he's saying. It's not necessarily that you explain to Nefesh Bahamis the benefits of it. You didn't explain to him the benefits of not having sugar, you're not going to bed late, and things like this, which he can understand. You just so connecting to godliness, and that feeling of godliness is pronounced enough that suddenly you, which is your Nefesh Bahamis and Nefesh Elokis, loses that interest in materialism. Like we see in Tanya, chapter 9 of Tanya. What it says over there, chapter 9 is all about the battle between the Nefesh Bahamis and Nefesh Elokis, and that's what's going on inside of us. So what does it explain over there? It says, love of God that shall flare up like a glowing fire in his heart. So you have this love of God that it gets very fiery, get passionate from the very depths of the right ventricle of the heart, which is coming from Nefesh Elokis. The latter should be so thoroughly permeated with love to overflowing. Your love should be so much, you have so much of a connection, a love for God, that it overflows as to inundate the left side as well, to affect the Nefesh Bahamis. to the extent of subduing the sitra achra, which is the source of the evil waters in it, and it subdues that evil nature that we have for things that aren't positive that we shouldn't be doing, and it affects it. And it's so interesting because he's saying it's not that it comes that you convince your nefesh bahamis that he shouldn't be doing this. You have this whole discussion. You say to yourself, you know what, I really should go to bed at a time. Why? So then you say, why should I go to bed at a time? I want to watch this movie. I want to do this, whatever it is. So what do we say? So you can sit there and say, okay, let me explain to you. If I go to bed late and I wake up tomorrow tired, and how many times is that discussion necessarily so successful? Say 1 second, let's take a break of discussing this. Let me go watch something and I'll come back to you. Whereas here he's saying the other version is just get so connected with what you're learning or thinking about godliness, learning, davening, meditating, thinking about godliness, that it can affect you. It's like a friend of mine, he told me, I pushed him to say a sikha in shul 1 week, and he told me, he goes, fine, like I pushed him a little bit, he said, fine, he'll do it. So then he told me later that week, he goes, thank you so much. I said, why, what happened? So he goes, because I learned the sikha, and he goes, not always am I so strict about going to shul for Ma'ariv. Because after learning the sikha, I'm like, how can I learn a sikha and not go to Ma'ariv? So he went and to Ma'ariv, and his whole, everything changed. What happened? He didn't explain to Nefesh Bahamis anything. But he overpowered himself with godliness, and that affected him. This applies likewise to each particular motive trait. Each person, fully cognizant of his own undesirable traits and their particulars, must stimulate during prayer the holy trait that corresponds to the specific evil trait within him to suppress and change it. And that's what he's saying, and that's what we're saying here, that we have to recognize what's the problem, and how can we deal with that problem by adding in light from the holy side, because there's one opposite the other. Nefesh Baham and Nefesh Kiss, they're so to speak opposed to each other. So if there's something negative in one way, so how can I focus on the positive aspect of it in another way? And that will help transform it. And then das, it's also refinement. But back to, that's like sort of the other way of doing it. But back to the typical way of doing it is by learning and meditating on what we learn and really understanding it and connecting to it and helping ourselves work on ourselves. This process of the bottom of 84, this process of refinement is accomplished primarily through the faculty of das. But the main way to transform the evil character traits, the negative character traits that we have, the things that we do that are not good for us, and we're not, the way we behave that's not good for us, not good for people around us, and not good in our relationships between us and ourselves, us and people around us, and us and God. Recognizing what they are, and need to work on it. The main way to do it is through das. But das is what distinguishes between good and evil. As it says, if one has no das, how can it be havdalah? Yeah. If one has no das, how can they have havdalah? Meaning, how can they separate themselves? Das, like that's what we say in Shemona Esrei. And then we say Atachan, which talks about the havdalah. Meaning, to be able to separate between good and evil comes primarily through das. To separate yourself from good and evil, we're not talking about separate yourself for a second, we're talking about true separation, to truly distance yourself from things that you shouldn't do, to truly have the ability to not desire something that's not what you shouldn't be doing, to not desire, let's say, watching a movie or going to a place you shouldn't be going to, or going to bed when you shouldn't be going to bed, or speaking to people not nicely. The only way to really change that attitude that you have within you is through das, is through connecting to it, realizing, meaning, for example, not having sugar. It's something that I grew up, sugar was something I like and enjoy, and not having it and now that I'm relatively very good at not doing it, not having it, it's not because I didn't the reason why it works is because I have a das in it. I've experienced it. I've experienced the negative effects of me eating sugar, and therefore, if I come to someone else and say, hey, sugar's not good for you, and this is with a lot of things, but why doesn't it work? Is because we don't appreciate, we don't connect to the problem with having it or doing it or eating it or whatever it is, and that's sort of the trick of the Yetzer Hara Nefesh Bahamis. That going to bed late, every night we go to bed late and we're tired the next day, and we wake up the next day, we're like, I'm so tired, I should go to bed earlier. But we don't have a das in it. We don't sense it. because if we did, then we would feel it. It's a bad idea. It's like what doing something that's dangerous. It's scary because you have a das in it. So too with everything else, we have to, and this is sort of the vart. It's, we have to connect it. It's like an example with kids. Let's say a kid does something, he breaks something of yours. Let's say a pen, he breaks a pen of yours, and you're unhappy. The way to make him or her appreciate what has happened, you can come and tell them off, but it doesn't make a difference to them really. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. Why do they do it? They don't have the das. So your job, the best way to do it is to give them the das. It could be explained to them in an example that they understand. Let's say they have a paper airplane. Say, how would you like if I took your paper airplane and I broke it up and I ripped it up? I cut this piece and I chucked it in the bin. Would you like it? No. So that's exactly what you did to me when you broke my pen. That helps them appreciate what's going on. And this is what he's saying. In order to truly transform ourselves, we have to connect. We can't just say, I shouldn't do this. We have to appreciate why we shouldn't do this, appreciate the negative effects of what we're doing, and appreciate the positive effects of staying away from it and doing what we should do. And this is the das. Since its primary characteristics is a spiritual sense perception, as explained above, das is specifically through the faculty of das that one can discern how one thing is good and the other bad. You have to recognize it's good or bad, not say to yourself it's good or bad, or think to yourself it's good or bad, but you have to feel that it's good and that it's bad. And that's what we're meant to work on, to get that perception, that feeling, that and like for me when sugar, and every so often that I will fall prey to it, and I'll have something, and then I feel like junky later. I don't feel good, and like my emotions are all over the place. I have to remind myself, hey, this is because of the sugar that I ate, and that's the problem. And that would that brings it back to das again, to recognize that and what does Nefesh Yetzirah do? He takes away the das and says, no, but you like this, it tastes good, this feels good. And he tries to remove that das feeling that you have. Physical feelings also from das. And this is what we're going to talk about here. 86. Physically, this is analogous to a person who feels the pain from a limb in his mind. You have a pain in your limb, in a body, in your toe, but you feel it in your mind. Through the nerves that extend from his brain to his limbs, he feels the limb's pain in his brain of das, specifically. This is consonant with the verse, he who increases knowledge, das, increases pain. Because the more das you understand, the more you connect it to yourself, connect to your body, the more you feel, the more you're sensitive to yourself. And this is what he's saying, that the more das you have, the more connected you are to your body, and you sense your body, and you're paying attention to your body's needs and desires and wants and things like this, the more you feel what's going on, and the more you can feel the effects. Like I talked about on Shabbos, whoever was here at the Shabbos meal, like the difference when you eat challah or plain white bread, or you eat sourdough bread. I noticed the difference. When I eat sourdough bread, I feel so much more energized, whereas eat challah, it tastes amazing, way better than the sourdough bread, but I just feel tired and sluggish. And it's this whole different experience. And that's what he's saying. The more das, the more we connect to us, the more we sense things, the more we're sensitive to these things, the more we can feel it. For the greater the das, the greater the pain the person feels. An infant's sensation of pain is not so acute since he lacks a developed faculty of das. Say a little kid, he doesn't have a good das, he's not sensitive to himself, so he doesn't feel it as much. Similarly, lacking das, an animal doesn't feel a wound or pain as intensely as a person does. So an animal doesn't feel it. So interesting. Nevertheless, it still senses some pain on account of its imaginative, perceptive residence in its brain's neural system. It does have some feeling of das, but das is connected to these things, and you feel it more. I think over time. Let's go just a little more down the page. Let's try to finish. Likewise, concerning the feeling of appreciation for the value of money or esteem, is so not just in the pain that you feel, but also in the value of things. And conversely, the heart's sense perception of lowliness and poverty, these feelings occur only in the brain of das. The appreciation for being poor or being rich and really understand what that means is das. Also, cruelty and compassion do not depend upon the comprehension, understanding of the mind, as explained about. I explained above before in chapter 5 that the kid lacks the das, he lacks the appreciation. It's not that you don't know the benefit of having money versus the non-benefit of being poor, but in order to change that reality, to do something about it, it needs das. But even a person understands his friend's dejection, but he doesn't actually sense the misery. You can understand a person, he's struggling because he doesn't have any money, and you understand that. But to really feel for him, to really connect with his pain and try to help him, you have to have some das. He's not moved to feel compassion. Like we talked about there, you're having compassion. But when he does sense the other's lowliness, he then, in fact, is moved to sympathize with him. But when you sense it, when you feel it, when you connect to it, and you have a das with it, so then you feel it, and you feel bad for the person. It's not just, oh yeah, like poor guy, like he doesn't have any money or whatever, he's struggling. You walk up to your own life. But the job is meant to connect to people, have that das, and say, wow, what does that mean? Like, poor guy, and it could take some time to think and meditate for yourself. Imagine that in my life, how that feel, chas v'shalom. And then you feel it, and you're like, whoa, and then you can understand people. Similarly, when one becomes excited over something beneficial, it's only on account of the sense perception. Also, when you get excited for something, true excitement is you connect to it. And if you're not excited about something, it means you're not connected to it enough. If it's something you should be excited, but you don't feel the excitement, nothing wrong with you, you're not connected to it. Thus, discernment which leads a person to choose goodness, to despise evil, comes only through the sense possession of das. That to truly want a likus and to truly despise things that are against the likus, it's just through das, it's through experiencing it, through sensing it. Not just, I learned in halacha that you shouldn't do this, but it's appreciating it on a das level, on a connected level, the benefits of doing Torah mitzvahs versus the non-benefits, the opposite of it, in not doing Torah mitzvahs. Yeah, beautiful. Summary. Prayer recognizes one's understanding, especially in the manner that is relevant to refining one's animal soul. Prayer energizes us specifically in connecting to what's good and what's bad, and recognizing what's good and what's bad, not just recognizing an intellectual level, but an emotional level. A soul that belongs to one of the three general categories, goat, ox, and lamb. So we're one of those three, so to speak. The refinement occurs through das, that affords discernment and separation. But the refinement to transform ourselves, to live better lives, to do things, it's not just, let me read a mimer and walk off, but let me connect to what I'm learning, connect to what's happening to my life, and not just be just a bipartisan person, but like, well, what happens? What happens when I eat this? What happens when I go to bed late? And meditate on our life and the effects of our actions. What happens when I watch a movie? How does that make me feel in the end? How does that make my next day? Do I feel more connected in the end? Do I feel less connected? And it's really about meditating and going through your day and recognizing what you're choosing, the choice you're making, and what effects are they having. And then you start to have a das with it. To be continued tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.